live streaming and recording.
What's that? Yeah,
Minute.
yeah, I'm seeing.
Oh, it's recording.
Okay,
Thanks,
it's recorded, it's live. I'm sharing it to everyone I know, everyone I don't know.
My grandpa would, yes.
See why I don't.
Probably call it, I mean, Cincinnati. Call it. Have that, something wrong, deal. Start and you were just dying.
I will. This is on my checker.
Hope they bring that second read. Telescope.
Yeah, we do 11 by 17.
They all on that. This is great. It's got elevation, streets, and it's all just clustered together.
I don't know why you can't read that. I can totally read that on my screen.
All of them, it's a, ooh, they get better as they go. You can buy them at Dilworth, which is great.
I know Ted is coming, so it's like.
Easily.
I know. Surprisingly.
Special, you know, you should have a singer.
I nominate you.
Yeah, I was
going to try to put it on.
I'm worried, I don't want it to corrupt yours or anything, it's so just trying to check works on my computer. And I loaded up on this one and it doesn't want to do it.
What's the error say?
Just a repair.
See if I can see
Is that your thing?
Error.
Well. Well, there's a problem.
There's a meeting. You have to read it because if I leave it. Every time I see it, I do it too. Isn't that terrible?
That one. AG saw me, my wife was, thinking of buying a house, and I started saying anything.
We'll go to 200.
So.
You guys have chicken.
Apologize for being late. I had a phone call just as I was going out.
Actually, since we're not here.
There's no way I can miss it, it'll be like everybody think, oh, she's just old.
I'm a friend that you know.
I'll take it.
You know, okay over there, I hear you talking, but I'm just kind of ignoring.
Some reason that is not. It doesn't like what I want to do. It won't open Lennar's for the. For some reason.
Well, let's do the traffic one and then go back.
Yeah, that's fine.
Are you logged in on, the computer?
Yeah.
As yourself?
Yeah.
Computer's trying to
Why
tell you.
don't you save it to the public drive?
Oh, I'm trying to open my OneDrive and get it through there too.
Okay.
So that's the next thing I'm trying, I can try it later.
Try the two.
Try it later. Okay. I'll leave. Get out of this. And you guys can. Okay, whatever. No, go then. You're wrong. Everything's.
I have a shirt that says that. It's fine. Not mine. I'm fine, it's fine. It's fine.
You guys are free to use.
Are we?
Yep.
This is you like, you can go ahead and have
I
it.
just
Yeah, whatever you guys wanna do,
Cool.
and you did.
Butler Freeman is gonna, talk to us about track studies tonight. And that, since we've been seeing a lot of them lately, we thought it would be good just to have some more conversation on them. So I am going to let Troy just turn the TV.
Wait, no, it's good, it's good.
It's like maybe.
And that, so yeah, so Troy, is, take it away.
Okay, Christine asked us to come out here. She said I had like 3.5 hours to talk about traffic stuff.
Yeah.
I figured I'd fill all that time. Cool. No, so what we kind of put together, I'll briefly kind of introduce what we kind of thought you guys might want to talk about, and then let's try to keep this really casual. If you hear something you don't like or you love, you can scream and yell, and we can just kind of have a conversation rather than us like really just kind of present it. But what we tried to do was put together what I'm calling traffic engineering 101, which is we're gonna try to put a bunch of definitions of terms that you guys have probably seen in all the traffic impact studies and maybe define them better so you can understand them a little more. Show you a couple of resources that we use when we do traffic impact studies. And then a couple of manuals and stuff that should apply. And then kind of a little conclusion on what should be in a study versus what it shouldn't be in a study. It's only like 15 or 16 slides, so talk back, right? So that's kind of us. So I am trying to make this work. There we go. So this is just us, right? So I'm Troy Willier, from Butler, Fairman and Cypher. We've done a good amount of work out here. I worked with Christine and Ben a lot. I'm the traffic department head for BFNS. Graduated from Purdue in 2011, started working right away. Butler Fairman, got a PE professional engineer's license in 2015, and then a professional traffic operations engineer in 2018. When I'm not working, as you can see, I have lots of kids and they love to play sports, and I like to coach sports. Also, I love grilling, doing some things like that, and I like to run a bike, and now really I like to swim because I decided to take on doing a sprint triathlon this fall, so pretty stoked about that. And then I'm gonna let Corey introduce himself, and he's gonna kind of take some of this presentation and roll with it at the start here. I'll pick up midway through and we'll just kind of talk through everything. If that's cool.
My name is Corey Phillips. I also work for Butler Fairman Cypher. I went to Trine University and I graduated in 2022. Been at the MFS since. And for a while, it's just been Troy and I doing traffic stuff. So I get time. When I'm not working, I just bought a house. Then and then left the country for like 2 weeks. Troy let me take the time off. And now I'm back.
Yes, we're happy to have you back.
I'm also into running and I coach cross country up at Westfield High School. So some of the definitions we'll go through. ADT is basically the average daily traffic. And so that's basically like a snapshot at one point in time, what are the traffic volumes at a certain location. And then AADT is taking multiple readings over the course of a year as they kind of like change, because like July and June are usually higher than say November or December. And so you kind of get like, NDOT usually has these seasonal factors that you can basically take into account a certain time and then adjust it for another month based on the variability across the year. So basically like ADT is like, you look out the window and you see what's going on. And then AADT is like, you can look out multiple windows at once and see like a bigger picture or like trends. Throughout most of these studies, you'll probably see AADT a lot more. And then completely separate from that, we got a turning movement count, which is not at a segment, but at an intersection. So those volumes include like who's turning right, who's turning left, who's going straight. Whereas like AADT's It's purely like how many people are on this segment of roadway.
Christine, it seems like as I recall, when we did Rock Bridge, we only did the turning thing. I don't remember any of the data on that, because I remember the turning, because because it was we had a couple of intersections there. Is that normal or?
Yeah, so I don't know exactly the one that you're probably talking about, but for like an impact study, which we'll kind of get through some of that at some point here, as we move forward. We'll do trip generation, which we'll describe some more for specific intersections that are entering and exiting the site. So we will have done a turn movement count for those exact intersections of existing condition. And then put the traffic from the development through just a turn movement count. ADTs and AADTs, a lot of times are more in like
Planning and like,
overall planning for a community, thoroughfare plans, discuss them a lot. Transportation master plan type documents, will have a lot of the ADT and that'll define the functional class of the roads. So. I know we're already on a tangent, which is fine. So functional class. Would be, you got your local roadway network, you've got arterials and you've got collectors. So local roads feed collectors feed arterials. And there's larger scale roads and normally use an ADT or AADT values to define what's gonna be a local, what's gonna be a collector, and what's gonna be.
The one we saw, I think, for Rockbridge didn't have anything, the daily stuff, it was strictly, like a
Peak
2 hour
hour.
period in the morning, 2 hour
Yeah,
period in the afternoon. And just the number of people that are going there and whether they're turning left or right or going straight.
Which we actually have next.
Which for you everyone.
Yeah.
On the, I get the ADT, but the ADT,
Yeah.
is that a true average or a weighted average?
So what they do with the they take. NDOT has counts throughout the entire state. That are counting 24/7, 365. And so they take trends throughout the entire state and say, okay, if you did a traffic count in September. Based on what we know of how the entire state functions, you need to multiply that by 1.037. I'm making up a number, but like they have a seasonal factor. That you would then take to your volume that you count in September, multiplied by that September seasonal factor. Which would then give you the average day over a 365-day period. So it's gonna vary, but it's never more than 1.1 or 1.2. July is normally significantly different because you get people traveling in the summer months, especially like not as many people on commuter corridors.
So it
September,
sounds like a weighted average.
it's like a weighted average, but that's how they do.
Gotcha.
And hopefully that.
And those codes.
Well, I will let you leave that open according to my will not confirm nor deny. So, okay, we feel okay about ADT, ADT, and you guys have seen more mature and cat setting. Yeah, cool.
so there shouldn't be too much of AAT and
Yeah.
traffic impact, but it's helpful with that one. You also see peak hour, which refers to what you guys might call, rush hour traffic, so it usually is like sometime between 7 and 9 in the morning. And 4 and 6 in the PM. Basically, we'll count traffic for like 6, 7, 8 hours. And usually the peak hours fall in those two ranges. And then we'll model the traffic based on those two higher hours.
Yeah, so we'll count typically more than 1 hour, maybe in the PM. But then when we do any kind of traffic modeling, it's always based on just a singular hour. Whether it's 7 AM to 8 AM or 7:30 to 8:30 AM, and then 4:30 to 5:30 or 5 to 6, however that falls for that specific location. And that's what you then would, from a traffic impact study standpoint, you add the PM and AM peak hour from the development to that AM or PM peak hour that we've collected already. So that's what you should see when you're reading through these reports.
And then another aspect to peak hour is the peak hour factor, which accounts for variability within that one peak hour. So the best example is like school where parents are dropping kids off and there's an influx of traffic for 15-20 minutes, but then like 15 minutes, the next 15 minutes, there's like nobody there. So this accounts for basically like that variability within the hour. And so it's another aspect that we have to put into the model, that accounts for basically the variability of traffic. We put the formula on here, but basically you take the whole hour volume and then divide that by 4 times the peak 15-minute volume. So if you have a value of 0.95, that means like there's the same amount of traffic the whole hour. But if you have a value of like 0.5, that means like everybody's coming for 15 minutes and then the next 15 minutes they're doing.
So we've seen that be a pretty big factor, like you said, around schools. Being a good example is, you got 100 cars that are using the intersection in a peak hour. Well, 75 of them are using it in 15 minutes. They're gonna keep doing that 15 minutes, but it's gonna be so fast. If you don't use that factor, you're looking at all the volumes, you're gonna model it wrong. So it's important to at least have that value, even just note it in the report in some manner.
And then this is kind of transitioning from things that we have to put into the model to things that the model gives to us. And so one of those outputs from a model is level of service and delay. And so level of service is basically a grading scale for delay, which the next slide will have delay, but delay is like the average amount or the time that the average vehicle takes at an intersection. And so like at a signalized intersection, you'll have a vehicle that might have to wait at the signal for 30 seconds. And then the next car comes and they hit the green, so theirs is next to none. So it's the average of everybody that goes through the intersection. And so NDOT, this is from the highway capacity manual, and NDOT outlines anything above an E. So A through D is acceptable. For the design line, which we have exactly touched on, but basically we'll model for the existing condition, 10 years in the future, and also 20 years in the future. And then we'll look at like the results 20 years out. And so if that is A, C, or A, B, C, or D, then what we have is good. That's considered acceptable. If it falls into E or F, we have to look at like, do we need to add a turn lane, or do we need to look at different intersection design? There's different things that we can do if it fails.
Yeah, so in Cumberland, we try to maintain a C or better. So if something drops below the C, that's when we typically start looking at.
Indication errors.
Mhm.
So I think it's always helpful to see the number of seconds associated with the letters. If you see letters and you automatically think, well, I just want to have an A, that's what I was told to do. So, and it is awkward, and I'll be honest, I don't even know why the highway capacity manual defines signalized ones different than unsignalized ones, why they accept a different amount of delay. I think it does have to do with the fact that at a signalized intersection, you're almost guaranteed there's gonna be people that are gonna hit it red. Whereas in an unsignalized, there's, especially like at a roundabout in a yield condition, like there's a lot more like consistent cars going in at 10 miles an hour, so you have much less delay. But in general, we do talk about this most of the time at an intersection level. Right, but we can get a level of service for just the northbound approach, or even just the northbound left turn lane. And so there's times where we'll look at it and say, okay, well, it's a level of service D as an intersection, or we'll even look at it and say, well, it's a level of service B as an intersection. But this one leg is a level of service E. Okay, well, we still probably need to mitigate that in some way. So it's important to kind of understand what you're looking at, whether it's the whole intersectional service or a specific approach. And try to make sure that that's defined well when you're getting the information from traffic accident.
So that's tied in with the times that you're looking into.
Yes. Correct, which if you're using the AM or the PM peak hour is gonna be the worst hour of your day. And if it can be a level of service C or better in your worst hour of the day, it's gonna be better for the other 23. And that's how we do every study we've ever done. I feel like this is a challenging concept sometimes, so I just want to make sure we hit on it well enough that like that's able to percent.
Yes, they used to have on doing this construction, because when they block up lanes for the construction, then they can't get around forever. So.
MOT is a whole different animal that we can have a whole other discussion on. But yes, I would agree, like,
The 56 Street and Pendleton Pike, they really screwed up.
so. Anyway, that's a,
But yeah,
I know that's an important one.
the grading scale is tied to the average delay, and so, yeah, I think that if we're looking at just the left turn lane or something,
Mhm.
it'll be the average delay felt by all people waiting to turn.
Yep. Pretty straightforward, once you kind of grasp the concept of delay equals level swings.
And then we already talked about delay, capacity is another thing that we'll look at, and so that's basically like how many vehicles can a given lane or segment of road handle. And so like volume capacity ties into that because we'll compare like the peak hour volume to the capacity is how much the road can handle theoretically. And so a volume capacity ratio of 1 would be absolutely
One more
saturated, 1 on the car, we've got queuing. Whereas if it's under 1, then everything's flowing smoothly.
at speed, technically.
Yeah, at speed. And so for traffic engineers, the goal is 0.9, so there's some variability in there where we'll shoot for under 0.9, everything's good. And then in that range from 0.9 to 1, stuff start to like get tight, where like everyone can still go to speed, and then basically over 1 would be over capacity, if there's too many vehicles for that road technical.
That 0.9 is it's basically an industry standard for. We know we're counting on 1 day out of the year when we do these turn movement counts. So that 0.9, instead of using 1 as our threshold, we're accounting for the fact that every day is a little bit different. So we're trying to make sure that if we can stay under that, we've got good confidence that we're not gonna see like failing on a regular basis. Now, if a crash happens or, there's extenuating circumstances, it still could fail, but that always gives us like, it's almost like a factor of safety.
And I think.
I was gonna say, when you're looking at the capacity of a lane, and it starts to get to, 0.9, 0.95, what does that tell you that we need to be doing?
Depends on the situation, in a left turn lane situation at a signalized intersection, for instance. You can look at adjusting signal timings. And see if you can take the green rock here, play Paul type of situation. Can we transition some green time? Sometimes, especially if you look at the actual volumes, if you're hitting about 300 to 350 vehicles in a left turn lane, I'll put it in a dual left turn lane. You can also look at, how can we make different kinds of gaps at the intersection, which like a roundabout can cause different kinds of gaps to allow movements to flow in a different way. It may be stealing something from another portion of it. It's not always just add pavement. That is an answer, right? I mean, you can add a lane, right? But there's other answers, I think, that are worth exploring almost always first. Rather than just add much pavement.
Can the systems change the frequency of light changes depending on the time of day and, when people are getting out to work, can the signals change for that time period?
Absolutely, yes. It does not. So it depends on where it's at, who owns it. So like 40, you guys don't have the authority to change those to change the time of day patterns. I know that NDOT has the traffic management center, just out here, actually on Post Road is the TMC. And they have a central network that they can monitor it all actually live. But like anything that you guys own, you can do time of day plans. There's different kinds of detection that you can use, whether you have stop bar detection. So when you look down the pavement and you're a signal, you see the soft cut loops in the pavement. Basically, those are just 4 turns of wire that have a current running through it. Then when your metal car on top of it knows you're there, it says, hey, somebody's here, you should turn green. Now, there's stuff in the cabinet that puts a delay on that and how it kind of functions. So that's called actuation. And there's multiple ways to do that, camera systems, there's infrared cameras, there's physical, just like video cameras, there's wireless pucks. But then you can also put in okay, this is a commuter corridor at the AM, we're gonna give extra green time for westbound to get into Indianapolis. We're gonna give extra time in the PM for eastbound to exit Indianapolis to make sure that we're getting flow as good as we can. And then even Midday stuff too. And then I know some areas in Indianapolis even that they go yellow flash from like midnight to 6 a.m. 86th Street is a pretty major corridor that does that. I used to drive on every day, so there's comes to mind, but. Is that the question? And some of it depends on even how old the cabinetry is. So newer cabinets have a lot more functionality, even.
You can get on your laptop and change it remotely.
I used to have access to all the city of Lafayette's traffic signals, and I could change whenever I wanted, like. So there's, central systems that you can install and things like that, that gives you a lot more variability to be able to handle stuff, especially like event-based stuff. It's a big one. So. Thanks. Okay, I can take this area. So I'm gonna walk through there's like 4 manuals that we use all the time. This is a federal manual, MUTCD is what we call it. It's the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. They just released this one and used just because the one for this was from 2011. They just released this in December of 2023, an updated version. Indiana has their own version that will get fully adopted. I was on the review committee. I think it'll get fully adopted by the end of this calendar year. So what we do in Indiana is we take the federal version, we mark it up, and we change some things that we think fits us better. I was on the signal review committee, and we ended up not changing that much because it's kind of silly. But that has all the standards. It's got standards, guidelines, and options, which as a traffic engineer, I love guidelines and options a lot better than standards because it gives me the ability to just like make the right choice for a specific area that has something. So if you ever decide to click on this link, it's fascinating to read if you want to fall asleep. But the bold stuff is a standard you have to do by federal law. Anything that's not bold is just a guideline, and anything that's italicized is just an option, like, hey, you can choose to do this. Cool. But that's one of the ones that we use. Apple there, it doesn't like me. Okay, this is something that you'll see referenced in probably every traffic impact study, is the ITE trip generation game. This, I have a link here, you guys won't be able to access it because we have to pay to use it. It's got a login and everything. Basically, it's taken development since the 90s all the way up until today. And it's a fast food restaurant that was this many square feet and has this many parking spots, and it produced X amount of traffic in the AM and X amount of traffic in the PM. And then it did a warehouse of X amount of square feet. It did this, and it creates it's taking all this data and it made these graphs. And what we can do then is we can say, okay, we've got a single family housing unit coming in that has X number of houses. How much traffic is that going to produce in the AM peak hour? And it'll spit it out and say, we'll have this much entering volume, this much exiting volume in the AM, and then the same thing for the PM. So that ends up getting referenced in every study we do because we're predicting something that we don't know, but based on historical evidence, this is what we think it's going to be.
Is that different from different parts of the country?
It takes it from all over the country. I don't think I've never attempted to filter it by areas of the country. I don't think you can.
But they outline all the states.
But they do outline, here's the states we got this data from for every development type. So it's the best data we've got. There has been times where you can't use, here's a great example. You can't use the fast food ITE trip gen for a Chick-fil-A. It's too much traffic. It's not the same as the Slim Chickens. Like, they're very, very different traffic producers. And so single family housing is a little more like even keel. There's still 2 cars per home. There's typically at least one that leaves in the AM peak hour and one that comes home. Like, it's pretty straightforward. You start to get into a little more like mixed use developments, manufacturing facilities, shopping malls. Up in the region, we run into some stuff of like industrial development. It's very, very challenging because there'll be big boxes that they'll build and they don't actually know who the tenant's gonna be. So you just really have to use a lot of generalizations to do some of the predictions. This is the best information we've got based on historically what has occurred.
I'm thinking of the. Like, this might sound a little strange, but the value of the housing. I think could make a difference, because if you have cheaper housing, you're gonna have people that are gonna be leaving. I mean, in today's world, with so many people working from home. I think if you have, mid-level or higher level housing, you're gonna have some of those people staying home. You're not gonna have as much going into the house. Do they factor that in at all, or should they, how often do they update this thing?
Well, so there's stuff that's been collected in the last like 2 years.
Yeah,
Now, it's taking
the whole entire average.
this whole entire, it's actually every single point is got a timestamp.
And then they have the best fit for it. So there is a factor of like the R square value. Basically, they take into account what the variability there.
Yeah, because you use the R squared value to see if you're gonna use a best fit line, or if you're gonna use like the actual, what am I trying to say? The parabola, this one. That's associated with the size versus the amount of vehicles that it's gonna produce. I know it's just really guys, I'll talk. All right,
Simon, did you have a question? It was.
So Brenda already asked me, so.
Okay, cool. All right, this is actually something that you guys could use. This is a link, and I'll give you the presentation, you can share it out. So this is the NDOT, it's called TCDS, it's the traffic count database system that NDOT owns and maintains. They count every stretch of their own roads all the time. And so if you go to that website and you find, a spot that you want to see any of these blue or brown squares are an actual count location that a turning movement or an ADT count has occurred. In Cumberland, there's all along 40. And I just looked this morning and there was like counts from 2013, 2016, 2018, I think 2022, along the whole corridor. And what we use this for a lot is we'll look at 40, we would look up, I think there's some along 21st Street. There, or maybe on Mount Comfort, there's some counts that NDOT is also put on their website. What this helps is look at like regional trends. So from 2013 to 2022, 40 has seen a 3% increase in traffic, or Mount Comfort has seen a 6%. So we'll take, 5 or 6 of those points throughout a community to get a growth rate for the community. This is just standard growth rate that's happening, and that's how we get to that 20-year volume. Is to use a growth rate from that kind of information and then add the development on top of that. When you're looking at an impact study. That's how we go from existing turning movement count to where we think it's gonna be 20 years from now. Is that okay? And that's when you can just look and you can run for where it tracks them. This is NDOT's guide for how we do traffic analysis. And it really just defines what I'm gonna show you next, which is what programs we're supposed to use to do different kinds of analyses. Whether it's a signal, whether it's a roundabout, whether it's a corridor, whether it's a entire county. So this does a lot of the guidelines of how we go about it. It's actually a really short document. I wanna say it's like less than 20 pages. Which is super helpful, gives some parameters for us to look at. I refer to this a lot, when I'm looking at different kinds of analyses. And then you'll see printouts in all the appendices, which none of you read, but that's okay, we still make them traffic engineers anyway. But you'll see printouts from a program called Synchro, which is what should be used whenever you're looking at small micro simulation of signalized intersections. It does a great job of taking a turn and movement count, putting a signal down, putting a lane configuration down, giving you results from a level of service and a volume capacity ratio. Sidra, which is actually based out of, ironically, Australia, is a program that we use for roundabout analysis. It's the only one that NDOT will accept as an accurate roundabout analysis, because Synchro, to be frank with you, sucks at roundabout analysis. We can take Sidra modeling and then kind of reflect it into a Synchro model. Uses some headway calculations and some weird things, but in general, if it's a roundabout, we use Sidra. And that's just been an accepted standard at the end. If you want to mix signals and roundabouts and alternative routes and maybe like a little bit of a larger, more complex network, this is what we use. It's still micro simulation, which is like you're putting a car on it and you're watching said cars, like watching the queues build and doing that kind of stuff. It is a lot more cumbersome to set up a Vista model than a synchro model or a Cinder model, which is why we tend to not use it for like a simple traffic impact study. You likely won't see any of those kinds of results unless it's a, you know, a very, very complex area.
If we're modeling all of 40.
If we're like all of 40 and all the way up Mount Comfort, while looking at like a bunch of developments along the way, we would start to entertain the idea of using like a Vista model. Transcat is what's called a macro simulation model. And that's basically what like the Indy MPO maintains and operates in Transcat model, everything within the MPO. And so that can, you put something, you know, put a giant warehouse or something somewhere and it'll kind of redistribute the traffic and it's more like 40-year projections, like big time area planning commissions and everything and have that like big type of.
And that's based on more like AADT volumes.
Yes.
Rather than like,
That's
we
not
don't
very-
really like what the peak hour is, like, it's big picture.
It's much big picture, much more big picture, a lot of ADTs and return.
This is something that should have been done as they were building all these warehouses out here.
At a bare minimum, with the warehouse that's coming in, you would wanna see like a synchro model for the area of influence of that specific warehouse. And then as that continued to grow, like the next turning movement count, you would hope, wouldn't have been until that was open, and then they look at that next area of influence, and every single one would have had a traffic impact study associated with each one individually. As a community, being able to review those simultaneously can get challenging. I work with Plainfield a lot as well, which they're growing as well. They have been growing for a long time. And so there's times where we're looking at 3 or 4 impact studies together at the same time, and we go, are everybody's interacting and are they interacting properly? Let's make sure that we're not underdoing what's gonna happen here because they're just happening at the same time.
I'm just thinking that we're probably lucky out here because half those warehouses are empty.
Yeah.
If they ever, you know, get stuff in them.
Yeah.
Our traffic could really be a mess out here.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a legitimate concern. And you'll run into this problem with warehousing where if Amazon owns it, from Black Friday through January 3rd, it's awful. And then it's pretty good from January 4th through Friday. Halloween. Except for Prime Friday. But like, and so some of that's really hard to project if you don't know who the tenant's gonna be. Or you get a tenant like Kohl's in a big warehouse that has 600 employees in a 1 million square foot building. Or you have, I don't know, like Pepsi that has 50 in a 1 million square foot building. So you're like, God, like how do I understand unless I know who the tenant is? So, and I know a lot of these developers will build big boxes without a tenant in. So, yeah, so that's part of the challenge, and questions we're asking, right? Like, do you have an idea of how many trucks a day or what type of tenant you're pursuing are good questions to ask. Because that can help kind of, you know, maneuver you through those discussions. I think that's it for me.
So we'll go through some of the things that you should see in a traffic impact study, and then we'll touch on a couple things that probably you won't see in a traffic impact study. The first being, a project definition, and then there'll be like a boundary area, so like. If a new residential neighborhood's going in on one part of town, we're not gonna model the entire town, what that one site means for everybody in Humboldt. We'll look at like the access points that the neighborhood is proposing, so they'll have like 2 entrances or 3 entrances, and we'll model those, and then some of the other like existing intersections that are close by, we'll model those, but then outside of that, we'll disregard everything outside of it. So we usually outline that in the agreement beginning, and so like. Basically everything in there we'll look at, and then everything outside is kind of just ignored. And then another thing that'll be in there is the different scenarios, so like, we'll look at, I kind of touched on this earlier, but we'll look at. What is traffic doing right now, and then once this development goes in, we'll look at what it means for 10 years from now, and then we'll look at. 20 years from now. And so, like Troy said, we'll use that growth rate that we find from TCDS to grow traffic and then add the trip generated traffic onto that once the development goes in. So you'll see different results for different years. And then trip generation, we talked about the manual, basically it's just used to predict how many trips that different sites will generate. And then once we get that number of how many trips are generated from a certain site, we'll distribute them across the network that we're looking at. And we kind of just have a map and we'll go through it.
Yeah, so that's an interesting, this is where it becomes a little more art than science. Because people, unlike water, don't just flow down hill. They choose where they wanna go. So what we look at a lot of times to help define some of that trip distribution is. What's the distribution already, like, if it's a development that's gonna hit an east-west or north-south road. In the AM, are 70% of people heading south and 30% of people already heading north. Well, let's match that with our people that are exiting our development, because that's gonna match with what the current conditions already are. Why wouldn't it not continue in that same manner? Similarly, we'll look at like other traffic generators, like, okay. You have Indianapolis that is just to our west. It's highly likely that some of these residents are gonna work within Indianapolis. So what's the most efficient way to get from your development to Indianapolis? Okay, let's make sure we hit 30% of the people are gonna be doing that. And then honestly, I've noted it in here, like. Talking to you guys, talking to Ben and Christine and the planning commission and everybody. About how does your community function now? And did we miss any major traffic generators or major businesses that employ people? That make sense to come from this area, come from this development. Let's make sure that we've got a decent amount of distribution toward that. We always put a big map. With all these percentages and show where all it goes. And then we'll bring it and we'll say, this is what we believe based on aerials and how the area has changed. Do you agree? And if the answer is no, we don't agree, okay, let's talk about it and let's make sure this works. The difference between 5% going somewhere and 10% going somewhere, not typically have traffic. But it helps kind of just understand the area better because we don't drive it. That's the hard part about this is that you're doing this art on an area that you've only driven maybe a handful of times. Or in some cases, if somebody's in California doing traffic and study in Indiana, never. So that's been, I think, so beneficial when we've done these. Just sit down and talk with people, be like, this is what we think, let's get your feedback. So I think that's what that's those questions.
To me, I know Christine and I go around a couple times on this one, it's like the one we just approved. The 182 homes. And it's like, you basically got two exits. You got one Creek Road and you got 700. Now, to me, it would depend on where I'm going,
Sure.
which exit I'm going to use.
Yeah.
And, in my mind, okay. If I'm gonna go grocery shopping or the drugstore or whatever, I'm gonna use One Creek Road because it's closer to where I'm going.
Sure.
I think Christine says, no, they're gonna go 700 because it's a faster road. Well, I don't know about that, but, to me, that's where your art, I guess, comes in.
Yeah.
But with the study that we got that said there's only gonna be an increase in traffic on Buck Creek Road at 5%. And I'm saying, well, that means 95% is gonna be going the other way, which didn't make sense to me.
But it's 5% increase of the.
There was an increase of 5%, but there's already not that much up there. They were gonna be the ones that were gonna be adding most of the housing to that.
Which one is it?
Which the Lindsay.
The most recent one.
The one where Buck Creek Road cul-de-sacs at the top.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it takes. into
With the school and
It-
everything.
Just-
I mean, you do have nothing to do, but
Word stuff, and the next chapter stuff has already happened.
So then we would have already developed that roundabout on the T intersection or wherever it's happening there.
They were the third one.
They were the third to come in, which. I'll be honest, that's that like weird triangle kind of, it's not a triangle, but it's kind of like a triangle.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I don't talk about it, but is 700. Another thing that we've done is you look at the functional class, I mentioned functional class earlier. So is 700 a collector,
If not, minor, I think it might be, minor archery.
minor arts or maybe?
But as far as like it goes, it's not blacker than Buck Creek Road.
Sure, but
And
it still would be like a more heavily like attractive road, and I think it goes all the way down to 40, right? Straight down to 40. And it crosses under 70. Yeah, well, yeah, because no one's gonna exit that development and go north on Buck Creek Road, because you can't, right? You can't cross 70. So if anybody's wanting to go north or get to 70 really at all, which there's probably a fair amount of people, if I live up there, I'm looking at the map. If I live up there and I'm going to Indianapolis, I'm not gonna drive down 40 and go in, I'm gonna drive over 70 to 70. But
I was doing a Rex on 70, I told you.
it's okay, it's 6 months now. Well, that's kind of part of like, but that's part of the discussion, I mean, and that's okay.
You know, and the other thing is like how far out you go. You know, you talked a little bit about that, but as an example. We have, as you're coming down 7. You have Grant's Farm, which is now pretty much built out. Across the street, you've got Parkview, which is 250 homes, which is just now starting to build, although it was approved back in 22.
And it's all tore up though.
Yeah, well, but they're just, they're just starting now. And then with all the new stuff that's been north of there. And so you're gonna have a lot of that stuff coming down, so it seemed like none of the studies we did brought it all the way down to 40. It only brought it down to 21st Street. And I'm wondering why, because you had these, these 3 or 4 new developments going in, and Parkview, which didn't have a house on it, until 6 months ago and less. It seemed like the studies should have gone all the way down to 40 to see what that intersection is going to be.
I'll be honest, that would be nice. But we don't do it for free. So I'm guessing the developers, they look to see like, what can we study that makes sense for what we can control. So what the developer, we mean the developer. What the developers can control is their entrance points. And their frontage along their development. And then. Maybe one intersection away. And then after that, they're like, we don't own the land, we don't own the road, we don't really, that's not our responsibility. And that's how we end up defining that area typically is. The adjacent intersections and then the intersections right at the development.
So we do a scoping meeting with every development before they start their traffic impact study and identify which intersections need to be studied, what background traffic. As far as other developments needs to be accounted for, all those types of things. And then your thoroughfare plan or a corridor study, those are the ones that look at those entire corridors. And that for your existing movements and do the longer term projections and things like that.
I mean, just kind of seems to me, because we got the warehouses in north of 70, that are, empty, that we're gonna eventually fill up.
Sure.
And it seems to me like we would eventually. I mean,
Yeah.
it shouldn't go all the way down to 40, because, you're gonna have already 2,000 homes or residences up there. But part of it's over in not in our area, it's in the Hancock County jurisdiction, it's gonna come down, so I would have thought.
Yeah, and that would really fall, like, Steve was mentioning, like, that would fall on like an update to the thoroughfare plan.
Yeah.
Update to the transportation master plan that the city or the town already has in place. And at some point that gets revisited over time, that's. As much as we put these big master plans together, like, they kind of are living documents always. They're a guiding document that then we update every X number of years. And you get to a point where all of a sudden, you know what, it's time to update it.
Yeah, but that.
In your thoroughfare plan though, when you're doing it, we use the comprehensive plan feature land use map
Right.
to project what we anticipate population growth, which then and different land uses, which then translates into the trip generation, and we figure out what lane improvements and things need to happen. So this is giving you perhaps a look at at a more micro area, but we've already accounted for something similar to what's being proposed, if it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, when we did the thoroughfare.
But I'm just thinking, we got the developers to kick in some money for, for that roundabout that's gonna be going in. Well, if something needed to be down at 40, I mean,
They're not gonna kick in.
that's all right, so.
They're not going to.
But it's
It'll-
gonna, but somebody's gonna get like,
But
somebody's eventually gonna have to do it, and then it's gonna be the taxpayers, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of communities do road impact fees, and so those road impact fees then are used to fund road projects throughout the community based on kind of what's been identified in those studies. And so instead of doing these types of analysis and negotiating improvements, they just pay a fee and it goes to kind of whatever and that.
It's like a tap fee or
Yeah.
same concept.
Troy, how much does an average traffic impact study cost a developer?
That's a great question, boy. I would say it's probably sixty to $75,000, depending on the size of the development and how many times we have to
Go back and forth.
I've done them for as cheap as like 30 or 40, if there was like a really well-defined stuff off the bat, if they've already kind of got some development done. But if it's in flux, I always have to build in extra time because you redo stuff a bunch of times. So, yeah, that's about what it would be.
And so I think when we did our thoroughfare plan, it probably, I feel like it was close to 6 figures. And that was to look at everything in town, and that was several years ago.
We did the transportation master plan,
Yeah.
2018,
Something like that,
2019.
18, 19.
It was right before COVID.
Mhm.
So I couldn't say what the fee was for, but
I don't
that's,
think it was quite,
but we were taking your thoroughfare plan, your comprehensive plan, and your trails master plan, like, we were kind of compiling that all into the whole, well, like, hey, here's everything for the community. And then there's public feedback that you get during that too, so there's time and effort to spend to like get out to the public, talk to them, get feedback, so. That's a different animal a little bit, which is why that is not cheap at all, but. That's, I don't know, a big good.
just so you guys have an idea, I mean,
I have more. of a
Yeah.
General.
Yeah.
So the thoroughfare plan is more of a projection, right?
Yeah.
The traffic impact studies typically are more for per site. In between those, what are the best practices for communities to do to keep track of their own traffic, so they can actually see whether the development that they are allowing, right, because piece by piece,
Sure.
how does it actually affect the streets today? Like, can they preserve it? Do people do it oftentimes? How do they do that?
So that's a great, so some communities do like regular traffic counting. Which I know sounds kind of silly, you're kind of person, but there is like. There's a market of that. You can have engineering firms do it, there's independent contractors that do traffic counting that we use, so like we sub. A lot of our traffic counting work to different companies. So that's one way, and then I know this is a long time ago, but when I worked for a county highway department. When I was in college, I literally was an intern, and I went out and I laid down ADT count tubes. You've probably seen them on the road, they're just rubber tubes across the road that count traffic. And we did every mile of county road over a 3-year period. So a lot of times, like 3 years is like a good indicator of how stuff's going, and you can do that under major corridors. Which gives you like a good idea, or like areas that 700 just developed a lot over the last 4 years. You can always do a before and after study too. Like, hey, before the development came in, let's make sure we get out there, get an accurate couple days with the ADT during school week, like September's always great. Because the school's in session, it's a pretty regular type of month, there's normally not weather. Get some counts out there before the development starts. 2 years later, go back and count again. How, right, like, are we over capacity, are we having problems? Crash history can be a good indicator. You can pull crash reports. Ben has access to all the areas crash reports. That's a good way to look at how has that changed? Because if you're not changing the road type or anything with road width, well, we got a ton more crashes, like, okay, well, what happened? Is it just because of higher volume, is there a turn that's problem, something like that? That help?
Yeah, it's gonna see also, you say that local knowledge is necessary, you know, the inputs.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, I've seen many communities around, I don't even know if everyone has the data, so.
Correct.
So when developers propose traffic impact studies, it's like, what do you actually have the data, and if you don't, what do you?
So yeah, so we'll go counter.
Yeah, yeah.
So we've got a camera that we'll go and set out, or we'll sub it out to the same contractor, if we've got a lot to do at once. But we've got a mile vision camera that's got a 25-foot pole set up next to an intersection, and it's count the intersection, stuff like that.
So that's part. of
That's typically part of that cost.
So yeah, any, we build that intersection that falls into this go zone.
We always count.
We'll have it counted. Like recently for the census. So we have-
Our asset management. Planning and research, like all this.
Oh, so Pacer ratings are based on, so there's ADT and the Pacer ratings, basically, I don't know if you guys know, that's basically how rideable the road is. How many potholes and what kind of alligator cracking, how it's failing. And so that helps us get, we then apply for funding, so that you can see CFG monies and then repave those roads that need it the most. And so I know if you guys have probably an ADT associated with every road in the community, but I bet you're probably pretty dang close. And I don't know how often we're continuing to update those, but that's on a big GIS map that we maintain. It also has underground utilities and we got a gazillion things in that map. But I started even, we've got communities where we're doing sign inventories on those kinds of maps. So we know when we need to replace different kinds of signs, safety improvements, that stuff. Trying to think what else would be part of like that asset management. We've done pavement markings now. We started doing a lot of pavement marking logs to replace pavement marking with money.
And do you look at any of that when you do the TIS?
If it's available, yeah, I mean, here we would, we have all, not all communities are as on top of it, and I have easy access because it is called Crestfield. But some communities do a great job of logging in, some communities don't, and so it just depends on where you're at. Here, it's a lot easier to gauge, I'm sure if they would ask you, you know. All right, we're getting close, okay.
What they also contain, sometimes we'll have warrant analysis, the traffic impact studies, and that basically, we look at an intersection and determine if it's a stop controlled intersection, if we need to put a signal in, and so there's certain guidelines that if we read a certain, then, the signal could be warranted.
Oh, real fast, the MUTCD, the book that we referenced earlier, it has 9 different warrants for a signal. We're not gonna know all of them off the top of my head, but it's like 1 hour warrant, 4 hours, it hits certain thresholds, 4 hours of traffic, 8 hours of traffic. School zone, crash degree, a number like that, so that kind of stuff, if they're putting a signal, it needs to be warranted in some capacity.
And then there's some discussion about access points, which we kind of already touched on, but basically we'll lay out a lane configuration for all the intersections that the development is proposing.
I would say. Number of lanes, how long lanes are. That's it, it's an exhibit, then you hand to a road design team and say, you need to design this up to the full standard. So like, we'll define number of lanes, typically how long that turn lane is, and that's kind of where we stop. From a traffic standpoint.
And that goes into the recommendations, basically all the things that would be required to meet the level of service and volume capacity ratio after 20 years. Usually that's in the form of like, what kind of intersection we need and how many people.
Alright. That might, yeah, we have stuff about that. So what I kind of mentioned, road is that we're not putting in turn radii, we're not putting in survey or right away, like none of that stuff's in there. Typically, we don't actually do safety analysis, that's normally a separate study, that we would do as a community rather than as a developer. Sorry, this one flip through it,
And then sometimes we'll include cost estimate,
so like when you're cost sharing, you wanna know those costs, but if you're not cost sharing, the cost of it aren't in there.
and then we also look at the area outside.
Cost sharing for different developers, awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, That should be fine. Sorry, I know that we're like, you don't want to.
It's great.
You can always email us or call us. Christine knows how to get a hold of me.
Then if we're gonna do a part two, we can do part.
Okay.
Yeah, let's come back out, let us know. So hopefully this was helpful. I know that it's just like the whole time. So. All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
What the gut feel is.
All right, cool.
Second, this shit's right there. I'll just go down and like. You can talk about especially a happy standard, it's 30 or something. Yeah. I was like. Why?
Yes, that's good.
Yeah.
Not as many. You should better you just dance. You never, I'm trying to get that.
Sir. You lost her. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to find out what was going on. It's hard to find. Are you? What? We don't. We don't have our education, so we don't say problems. Everybody in there. We don't, those kids, turns out it's just really fast, I'm like. Yeah. We right now. Yeah, my friend, you're. Yeah. What else was that? Yeah. And I'll be, that's a problem. Our serious matter, I do. Our serious. Yeah.
Yeah, it's what we did. I mean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Take the time down. The field there. Yeah. I was through the recommendation.
Okay. Thank you for coming and welcome to the Cumberland Plan Commission regular meeting for July 23rd, 2025. Is Hannah, or you call? Hannah, you call the roll? Okay.
Mr. Grindle,
Present?
Ms. B, present, Mr. Carroll,
Here,
Mr. Brand. Brady, sorry, wrong.
that's me. Here.
Mr. Loud,
Here.
Ms. Gaskin, Ms. Lathrop. Must be four.
Okay, we have a forum, so we're good to go. Consideration of the minutes of the June 25th meeting. Anybody have any comments on that? If there's no comments, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve June 25th minutes.
So,
All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, next on the agenda is citizens' comments. Now, these, I know some of you were here for the two public hearings we have tonight. This portion of the public comments is if you have anything to say about in general about what's going on in town. Or good, bad, or indifferent. So, anybody has anything?
I grew up on Sacramento.
I'm sorry?
I grew up on Sacramento Drive. The drive that you guys
Okay,
are going to this. Yeah.
that's,
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to come to a podium.
yeah, have to come up here.
Name and address for the record. Okay.
But this is again, nothing related to our public hearing items. This is just something general about Cumberland.
Just general about Cumberland, okay.
If you have things, anything about Cumberland,
So Autumn Woods was put in as a Cumberland residence right at the field behind our neighborhood. We didn't really fight it, we were like, whatever, development, it happens. There was a shooting at the basketball court that shut down the playground that my daughter and I rode our bikes to, like, and as a kid, like, I could ride it up and down Buck Creek Road without ever thinking twice about anything like that happening. So that would be my comment about Cumberland coming to the backside of the street that I've grown up on.
What's your name?
Jennifer Thomas, 7321 Sacramento Drive. My grandparents were the third house on Sacramento Drive that was built, so the family has been there a long time. My house was built when I was 10 years old and I bought it from my mom.
thank you.
So at this point, there's nothing we can do to stop it, is that what I'm hearing?
Stop what crime.
this is just general.
This is just general about Cumberland. It's nothing to do with any subdivisions or anything.
Yeah, it's a safety concern for me having a young child growing up.
I would encourage you to come and talk to our police chief. If you have concerns about particular areas. They're, right next door. You can come in during the day and talk to them.
Okay, I know that we used to have a police officer that lived on our street, but because of all this, he has moved further out of town, so.
Yeah, I would encourage you to come and, can't think of her name. Yes, yeah, Suzanne,
Okay.
I encourage you to come and talk to her.
All
Cause
right.
I know I mean, they have been very good about patrolling areas, if there's these things going on. In the neighborhoods, several neighborhoods, we've had quite a bit of speeding going on, they've come out and put in their, portable speed, sensors. That come out and patrol the area more. And in fact, when you're gone on vacation, you can fill out a form, hand it to them and they'll come out, and pretty much every day or every other day, they'll come out and walk around the house to make sure it's still secure. So they probably, do a pretty good job. So, but they can't be everywhere all the time. So, but yeah, please
Yeah,
talk to her.
The traffic has been increased too, and I'm afraid with this neighborhood going in, that they'll start using our street as a
Yeah.
side street.
Go talk to her, to the police chief. Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Anything else? All in favor? The planning commission comments.
No.
No. That's what I'm saying, this is for Victoria who's not here, but I think the town's been really doing a good job of communicating all the different activities that are going on. I see a lot of, showing up in the, if you don't get it, Cumberland Facebook page, she puts out stuff probably 2 or 3 times a week about activities going on in Cumberland.
Actually, Hannah.
Oh, Hannah does that, okay, well, we're in the same office now anyway. And I noticed, we made Channel 13 news tonight about the stop strip, automated thing, so I guess we're getting one of those already. That one now. So that'll save our police officers from being in danger of trying to put stop strips in.
Demonstration inside.
Yeah, they have it on Channel 13 tonight. Okay. No other comments, next is no continuances, no old business. So we'll move into new business. And for that, we have 2 items to discuss. The first is the preliminary plat for Cumberland North, which would be MAP 2025-02. It's for the mixed residential development, approximately 159 detached single homes, 550 multiple family units, located on 93 acres. Just to give, since we do have some folks here today, the process for what we're going to go through here is similar to when we do a rezone or a PUD. We will have the petitioner give their proposal, what they're doing, what they're presenting. Then the staff report, in this case, it'll be Oksana, you'll be doing that. And then the group may be asking some clarifications. Then I'll open the public hearing. And that time, that'll be time for the public to discuss. We'll allow about 10 minutes for that. If we need more time, we can extend. But that'll have to be voted on. And then we'll close the public hearing. At that point, there'll be no more comments from the public. And then we'll have the discussion and then vote one way or another. And then whatever we do is actually a recommendation to the town council, and then you have the final. This one we do.
You guys
The one we do second, which is the amendment of the PUD, that one will run similar, but that one does get approved by the town council. So we'll start with the, and I also wanted to give a little brief on what the secondary or the primary plat is. The Cumberland North was came before the planning commission back in January, I believe, and was approved. We approved going forward with a positive recommendation to the town council. It was approved by town council probably at their next meeting, either in January or whatever.
I think it was February.
And then, whatever, I'm sorry, and then, so the preliminary plat, and Oksana will go into this in more detail. But basically, at this point, it comes for us, the plan is approved, okay? It's not changing, it can't be basically changed in any form. To speak of, it's approved, it was approved by the town council. At this point, they're coming with their plans of, okay, here's what the roads are gonna look like, and you'll see it when they do their proposal. But then our job is basically 2 things. To make sure that the proposal meets all the things in the plan that we approved. And if it meets all the other applicable town standards. If it does that, we approve, because that's all they have to do at this point. Now, as it comes along later, when they actually get ready to start building houses, then that's the secondary plat. And at that, they come in and say, okay, here's exactly what's gonna happen. So you'll see in her proposal or her review, that there's a few things that were not covered that will have to be, then approved at the time secondary plat is done. At that, that's strictly done by the town staff. And so. So does that help a little bit? I mean, basically, we're kind of an on-off switch at this one. Because either they meet it or they don't.
So
And
this,
if they meet it, then we have to approve it. If they don't, then we can make some more recommendations, and you'll see there's actually a couple of things that were not covered in detail enough, and that they'll have to do that in secondary plat, and Oxon will be talking about that.
so, yeah, so, plat applications are ministerial, so primarily what we're doing is checking to make sure that they meet the standards that were established in the PUD that was previously approved, the subdivision control ordinance, to some extent, the zoning ordinance. We're looking at infrastructure that's serving the project, the lot sizes and things like that, not the buildings themselves at this stage. And then if it receives an approval, then their next step will be the secondary plat. And that can be done in phases for sections for construction, and at that is done at an administrative level, but it's a similar process. Does it meet code? Does it not? And then if it requires a development plan, so like commercial multifamily projects require development plans, that's your detailed construction plans, and that's something that would come back to the planning commission. So just kind of to clarify the different steps kind of coming in, all that has to happen before building permits can be reviewed.
And for those who were here at the other one, there was their basic plan that they presented, but then there was a whole bunch of things that they agreed to on top of that. And so when staff reviewed that, they reviewed to make sure that they committed to those commitments they've made, are all covered. And that's why I say there's a couple here that, primarily, most of the landscape that, they didn't cover in their second or what they're proposing right now, so. Okay. With that, our conditioner.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Chad Mays. I'm with Kinley Moore and Associates. We're located at 500 East 96th Street, Suite 300 in Indy. I'm here on behalf of Lennar Strategic Capital Partners to request the primary plat approval for the Cumberland North project, as you mentioned. Taylor with Lennar and Will with Strategic Capital are here with me for this
It
request.
takes a second. It's slow.
Thanks, Ken. If you could go to the next slide. Thank you. So, same location as when we came here for rezoning. It's about a quarter mile south of I-70, depending on where you are on 70. The west side is the Lennar single family side. Future institutional there resides in the middle. And then the multifamily portion will be on the east side. It's between North Buck Creek Road and North 700 West, which is also 150 north, depending on where you are on that road. Majority of the sites north of 150 north, with a portion of the residential being south there. You can go to the next slide, please. Thanks. So the approximate location address wise is 7348 West 150 North. Again, it's single family institutional and multifamily development. Part of that Cumberland North DD, you're all aware that approximately 94 acres, about 45 of that is single family. Approximately 11.5 would be that future institutional use, and then 25.17 is the multifamily, with 5 acres dedicated to the park, and also this additional acreage dedicated to public right of way. So for the multifamily site, total of 7 3-story apartment buildings, 1 amenity center that is 1 story tall, and then 5 1-story garage buildings. Single families, about 162 lots. Everything's intended to meet the PUD. You could go there, so thank you. So this is from the PUD, similar use, orange and yellow is the single family, green is the park. Purple is that future institutional, and the blue is the multifamily portion. This is just a 1,000-foot view of the primary plat cover sheet, which I believe you all received. Showing the single family lots on the west side, multifamily in the east, Farmstead Road being that main east-west road, and then other roadway extensions. And additions, and then the future institutional in the middle of the park. This is high-level site plan, still continuing to meet the PUD. Again, Farmstead Road runs through the middle of the project, what'll be a public right of way. It connects to that roundabout that has the future north-south road and it'll run north and then connect to that 200 north extension. And then on the far east side is the right turn right in, right out lane on 700. This is just our high level stormwater routing diagram. Everything's flowing, the ponds are gonna go to the west from the east, follow those red arrows, and then ultimately discharge to the open legal drain to the southwest quarter there. So just like to say thanks to staff for answering all the questions. I know this one took quite a few, so I appreciate staff and the city just being responsive, guiding us through the process. As you can see here, this is the excerpt from the staff report recommending approval with those conditions that we intend to meet. We more or less needed to add some more information into the resubmittal that we did. Our intention though is to fix it and make it meet the PUD. So if you have any questions, Will, Sam, or Will, Taylor, and myself will do our best to answer those.
That's the one question I do have is, I mean, the landscaping, I mean, there was quite a bit, I think, missing. We're just trying to get through quickly to get to, I mean, why was it missing?
We noticed after we submitted that one of the tables wasn't in the correct spot. And then we need to add some landscaping, but the intent is to get that done, so. Yeah, I apologize on not addressing the comments.
Related to the water and all those are something that actually comes later, because you need more detail before you can get those kind of answers from the water.
Yeah, a lot of times too, with these kind of projects, the detail, the real detail comes like at the end when you do construction documents. But this one's probably I would say about 40% design, so it should have been addressed and it wasn't, so apologies for that. But our intention is to have those in there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now the staff report.
Good evening, everyone. I will just briefly go over the procedure. I mean, Mr. Brindle and Ms. Owens already educated everyone on it, so I'm just gonna do the dry facts. The primary plat, which is what we are reviewing today, serves as the first stage of developing the subdivision, which means that we are looking at the layout of the land, where will the roads go, infrastructure, and lots. Do we have enough space for all of these improvements in the future? We'll look at things like, is there enough water to serve the development? Well, is there enough sewer capacity to serve the development? Is there a place for water to go through, which is the stormwater review? And today my report summarizes the findings from the planning, engineering, fire department, and any other staff that submitted comments on the primary plat. This review also serves as the secondary review of the PUD development plan. So when the ordinance was adopted, part of that was the concept plan, which was that beautiful image that we saw in a few slides before with, landscaping. It was a general look. This time around, we've got a lot more detail, which is, was already mentioned, things like landscaping, the exact amounts, things of that nature. What it means is that, we went from the concept in the PUD development plan to the details in its more detailed plan. Both of these reviews require approval by the Plan Commission, and both of them require public hearing. And then there are certain criteria for the primary plat approval, which basically if they meet all of the standards, all the relevant standards of the subdivision control ordinance and the zoning ordinance, then the plat needs to be approved. As part of the approval, the planning commission may add conditions and commitments, to the approval. Conditions are things like something has to happen before you even approve construction. Commitments is more like a law that kind of keeps staying with the approval for the length of the project. So in this proposal, we have, 162 single-family residential lots that are split into two phases, phase of 1 and 2. There are 2 multi-family lots. They are marked as lots A and B. And then there will be 1 institutional lot. Also, the development has 9 common areas that include 4 stormwater ponds, as well as the park. And the park is the common area number 1, not number 9 in the north, and that's the one that is meant to be dedicated in the future. So the developer will develop a portion of that and then dedicate it to the town. There are also a couple of blocks in the single family area phase 1. There is 1 block, which is the Evans Court. It's the alley. It's just marked on the plat as a block. And then block B is the cemetery, which I assume will just be sort of, cemetery will be separate then from the development. But right now, it's just a part of the property that the developer owns. As part of this development, the developer will add over 10,000 feet of new streets. And there will be also 3 parking lots, 1 by the park, and there are 2 small parking areas in phase 2 of single family development. Those are the ones that there is an area in the south of single family development that has a lot smaller houses, and in order to allow for a little bit more additional parking, the developer added parking spots. I believe that was one of the requests from the fire department at the PUD stage to ensure that there's enough on-street or actually off-street parking. When it comes to the review, the staff found that the following standards have been met. Lot sizes, number of lots, marked setback lines, sidewalks and trails width and location, open space amount. There was general adherence to the conceptual design in the PUD ordinance and the design of the park with the enhanced landscaping. Things that have not been met from the planning perspective, as was mentioned before, was landscaping. So there needs to be an addition of a parkway with street trees. About 40 more are needed, and there are a few areas where right now the parkway trees are just not displayed, and so staff believes that if the developer simply displays the trees at the same spacing like they did everywhere else, they will reach the required amount. Landscaping buffers, so in the PUD ordinance, the landscape buffers, the minimum amounts of trees in the single family areas is stated in the PUD ordinance. When it comes to the multi-family sections, the PUD ordinance references the town code. This is why in the staff report you see that a reference like the different standards for the amounts. And so, for example, in the multi-family area, in addition to the trees, there are supposed to be also shrubs to create enough of that landscape buffer between the existing single family lots and the multi-family development. But right now they already displaying the berm as well as the right number of trees. So they just need to add the shrubs too. Single family areas, as I think it was mentioned before, there were just discrepancies between the table where they do the calculations for what's required versus what they displayed in the plan schedule, and then versus when you actually start counting the trees on the plan. Like those numbers didn't align, and so I believe that once they hopefully change the details, they will address the discrepancies. And staff also provided at this time a graphic to show what you consider all of the buffers, the required amounts. So, if we agree on that, then, the developer will have the details to add the right number of trees in all of them. Buffers. Landscape easement consideration, so, right now on the plat, some of the landscaping is displayed and marked as landscape buffers that are located in common areas, which means that they're not on the private lots. However, there are certain areas where landscaping is displayed in a landscape easement that goes through some of the residential lots. And so, of course, the staff, knowing that sometimes people don't realize that the trees in their backyard are the required trees that are supposed to be there, we would, it would be best if all landscaping was in the common area so that then HOA can, take care of it and people know for sure that they shouldn't be removing those trees. But if for some reason, because of the utility considerations, it only can be provided for the landscape easement, that would be my suggestion, is just to discuss it with the developer if that option is available. And if not, requiring at the stage of secondary plat, when you go through covenants, when we review those, that we make sure that the language is there to say, that people cannot just remove the trees in the backyard if that's a requirement. So those are kind of two options there, but it needs to be, I think, discussed. Parking lot, perimeter landscaping, the park has trees around its parking lot. The common areas that provide the parking in that southern single family portion, they don't display it. I just believe that because they're so close to the houses, I think those houses would appreciate that there's some landscaping to shield people's cars and lights. And I think it would just add a little bit more area that is landscaped as well. So my suggestion was to add some landscaping there. Utilities and infrastructure. So for the water supply, there is a will serve letter from citizens. During the PUD process, the fire department asked for the information about the water flow and pressure from citizens. And as far as we understand right now, the citizen energy group will only be able to start actually doing the work of checking the workflows once the developer owns the property and they have the agreement, they have the contract, and then they will be doing that. That's at least was my understanding.
That's the regulated drain.
No, water flow. and
For the
pressure.
water flow, once they get to secondary plat and they have more detail on the pipes and the
The design,
flows
yeah.
and the design, then citizens should be able to give us that photo.
Yeah, so basically, right now, we still don't know that data, and the staff recommended to add a condition that was still in track of the data at the secondary last stage, just to ensure that if the fire department needs to come in and tap into the water, they have the right pressure to address any issues. Sewer system, Aqua provided a will serve letter. Drainage, stormwater drainage, so this development needs to meet the town drain standards, but because it also uses the legal drain, it needs to meet Hancock County Drainage Board standards. And at this point, the kind of the last caveat to this, from what I understand it from the county's side, where in order to approve the relocation of the drain for this project, again, the developer has to own the, I think that's, yeah, the developer has to own the land in order for the county to, I guess, get into the contract to relocate the legal drain. So that's something to, again, to keep track of and ensure that that is done before the secondary plat approval. Adequate right of way, the engineering staff reviewed this, and for the most part, the plat design shows adequate right of way for all of the streets. There was only a comment about an additional right of way that might be needed to fit in the right turn lane from North Buck Creek Road onto New Farmstead Road. And we referenced the Crossroad engineer's comments there. Street design, the outstanding designs, so again, the design meets most of the standards, but the outstanding one that it doesn't is that there are a few areas where the road center line radius is 90, but it has to be at least 100. So that will need to be addressed in the redesign of the plat. Let's see. I put the parking comments here under the street design. Just because when the fire department was talking about the street design, they specifically wanted to see on-street parking. And the developer provides it kind of in the common area. That I already talked about. Okay, and another one is that during the PUD process, the fire department wondered how parking would work in the single family phase one by the alley, because I think this is the only, the lots 152 through 168, which are right south of the park. They're the only ones that, it looks like they will have access from the alley, Old Evans Court, as opposed to from the street, so. The fire department was just wondering how street parking would work there, and my understanding is that there is no on-street parking on the alley. So, the lots will just need to handle the parking on their own, but there's also a parking lot right with the park there, so maybe there's just additional parking needed, there will be a few spots available. All right, so all in all, the plan commission, staff recommends approval of the primary plat with the following conditions. So the first one is to revise the landscape plan, to be submitted with a secondary plat to address the following issues. Check and correct discrepancies between the tables of required plans, plan schedules, and the displayed amount of landscaping on the plan. Add parkway trees to the north and south portions of County Road 150 in the single family phase, and along the eastern side of Lions Drive by the multifamily lot.
You can talk about it.
I hardly hear you back here.
Yeah, it's not here. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can barely hear.
She has to do it into there because this is also being actually on
It's
YouTube.
Hold on, let me, I wonder if this still is. There we go, well, I don't know if you can see it, but,
You know.
thank you, yeah.
Reviewing right now.
Any different, still can't read it.
Yeah, yeah. Add missing shrubs to the multi-family transitional buffers for zoning ordinance requirements. Ensure that the landscaping is provided in all buffers for the community ordinance requirements. Some of the local streets for radii do not meet the minimum required radius, the revised plans must be submitted with a secondary plat. Review the need for the additional right-of-way dedication to fit all road improvements and revise plans accordingly at the secondary plat stage. The water flow and pressure must be checked and proved to be adequate, and the results must be submitted with a secondary plat application. And then finally, the approval by the Hancock County Drainage Board must be received with a secondary plat application. That is all I have for you.
Thank you. Okay, now for this one, it's time to open the public hearing. I would ask that, as I said earlier, at this point, the project has been approved. And it's our job to look at what she just went through. Did it meet all the criteria of PUD and the additional things that were discussed and during that meeting and was approved by town council? And then does it meet the other applicable town standards that PUD doesn't cover? And if it meets those two things, we're basically administratively have to approve it. So if you would, if you could limit your comments to things related to that, where you feel it does not meet the, what the PUD had in it, and the conditions that we approved it with, and where it does not meet the town standards. So if you want to speak, come on up. You need to give your name and address, and we'll go from there.
Jennifer Thomas, 73 Grand West Sacramento Drive, Greenville, Indiana. Would you want this built on the backside of your street?
They're not allowed to answer, this is not.
You just comment, you don't provide answers. I'm sorry, but that's the way the rules are. Do you have a comment other than that?
What is the timeline for this development?
Total for everybody is 10 minutes.
No, for the developer.
I'm sorry.
The developer can answer that in their rebuttal.
Yes. Yeah, they will have, after I close the public hearing, then they will take what the public has said. And will probably try to address some of those.
Okay, so you
Okay.
don't know about when.
They don't answer questions, this is the.
We don't answer questions at this point.
Raise your comments, and then if the developer, when they have a chance to respond, they just notify, they can respond to the comments that are provided by the public.
Okay, so I should ask them.
No, they, based on your question, once we close the public hearing, then they will have time to give additional information. At that time, if they so choose, they can reply to your question.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yes, it does.
Okay.
So currently they don't own the land behind Sacramento Drive, so do you know how much that section's selling for? That we could possibly pull together and purchase?
Yeah, that's,
Not,
It's not a question and answer.
it's not a question and answer. Just make your comments and then we'll go. from there.
okay, well, we'll answer when the hearing.
It's up to them.
is Finished, it's not like when my family built their umbrella was in our backyard, like.
I understand.
And it's not like I could take the house my grandpa who's
I understand.
deceased
Thank you.
built for me. And my mom with 6 extra inches of insulation and a lifetime warranty on a roof, like these are not things I can just take and move with me, but I'm gonna be forced to live in Cumberland.
I understand that you're concerned, but it's already been approved and we're going forward, and I think it will be better for the community, and that's why we recommend approval to the town council. Thank you.
It's all about money, it's not all about like humanity, I don't know. It was your house. How would you feel?
Anyone else? Please.
Hello there, my name's Kurt Klein, 7265 West 150 North. Two comments, or two things. There's a enclosed ditch, Schneider ditch, that runs from Interstate 70 right through this property, just to the west side of the existing pond, that goes over to an open ditch at Buck Creek Road. And supposedly, we've always been told that you can never build within 50 feet of that ditch. They don't show that ditch on the drawing anywhere. They show homes and stuff right where the ditch is at. So that's a concern, because a lot of people's perimeter drains tie into that ditch for their current residents, that when we built, we had to put that in. That's number one. Number two is the existing pond that is there, that is incorporated with the park, is a contaminated pond that no wildlife lives in. When they redid 70 the last time, they filled in 2/3 of that pond with the lime from the interstate. And the bottom of that pond is completely white from the lime. And every time the rain comes, water comes down through the dirt where they filled, through all that concrete that's piled up and into the pond. So there's no wildlife there. There's nothing can live in there. And there was a little aluminum pontoon that was in there at one time, and it ate the corner of the aluminum pontoon. So I'm concerned about having a pond that's contaminated in a public park. Okay, so those are my two comments. The other thing I had would be, and I don't know if this is allowed in this conversation or not, but like 150 North is a narrow road. Is a developer gonna widen that road and take care of all the other roads, or are the taxpayers gonna have to take care of that? You know, we all pay our taxes and now we're paying for a developer to come in and basically do what they wanna do, so, okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, I heard. I got books to carry. Good evening, Darren Green, I'm here with my better half, Dr. Higgins back here. We are at 7320 West of Sacramento. Very fortunate to live in the house that her grandfather built many, many years ago. We haven't lived in that house very long. I think we closed on our house in January, maybe a week before coming to the first meeting when we learned about this. We're kind of resigned to the fact that we're gonna have some neighbors behind us, but we've just had a couple of comments to make about some of the things. Actually, Carl touched on that a little bit, the drainage. It's pretty well known from the neighbors that I've spoken to that there's a little bit of a challenge with that drainage back there. Understanding that, yeah, there's gonna be a ton of dirt work and the architects and all of you guys have done a lot of work, but thought maybe if you were bringing that to your attention to make sure at least you're aware of that whole situation. The second part is, I'm gonna maybe apply a little emotional pressure here a little bit. And then it was discussed, I guess, the landscaping plan, the berms and all of that hasn't really been firmed up yet. But we, you know, our view currently is looking out right over what you guys are gonna be doing. And we, as wanting to be the neighbors, are hoping that, when you're looking at what you're doing with that, that we don't just say, hey, what's the minimum? Do we have to have a tree every 30 feet? Just kind of keep in mind that, you know, that's our spot and. We necessarily don't want to have to look at 3 houses across our property, but we understand it's happening, but. You guys have the ability to kind of lessen that impact of you, and that's really from my heart, it's kind of like, we're hoping we can just get a little bit of consideration. Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Didn't know what you were gonna say, so I had no idea they didn't talk about.
My name is Ron Stetzer, and it's 7280 Sacramento Drive. The only thing I would like to know, and I'm sure I'll have to come back to an answer, is if these criteria on mounds and shrubs are not met, who would I talk to? And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anything else? Any other comments? Okay, I appreciate the comments. I will close the public hearing. And at this point, if the petitioner would like, make a few more comments, this will rebuttal or answer some of the questions that you might. You're welcome to.
And when they make their comments, they can speak loud enough so we can hear.
Yeah. Yeah, somehow we have to figure out how to do that with the public.
Right, house back for this.
Yeah, with the camera system and the state as of what July requires us to live broadcast these on YouTube now. And that's our thing that does it, so it's kind of tough, yeah, I agree. We need to work on that. Because the same thing, the town council meeting could also have to be broadcast.
Will Zink with Strategic Capital Partners, I live at 6436 Dawson Lake Drive, Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm, like I said, with Strategic Capital Partners and the whole family. and I can answer the timeline. So it's about 6 to 12 months for design development with the town. And then 18 to 24 months of construction. And then about 12 months of lease up. So we'd be stabilized in roughly it's 50 months, so it will take 4 years. It's kind of the total end-to-end project scale. And then on the landscaping, we really apologize that we dropped the ball on that. We were, well, I think too focused on the civil and infrastructure and just missed those things, but we committed to do those, and obviously we wouldn't be able to pull construction permits or anything until we've obviously met every requirement, so apologize, but we'll catch up on that.
So the first houses would be.
Well, I was on the multifamily side,
Approximately.
so I'll let Taylor say the houses.
Yeah, I can go in there. Taylor Navarre with Lennar Homes. Our address is 11555 Marine Street in Carmel. Just want to touch on the timeline there. Everything goes smoothly with the construction plan process with the design, like Chad mentioned, those are about 40% done. And we look to submit those for review late summer, go through the winter likely with the town's review process. And then likely break ground in the spring of 26. And that will put homes going vertical approximately in the fall, late fall of 2026. And as Will and Chad both mentioned, we're also amenable to the landscaping commitments that were discussed throughout the PUD process and that were brought up with staff report as mentioned, so.
Yeah, that timeline pretty much follows what's going on Buck Creek Road right now with Rock Ridge. They were approved last spring. They're probably within a month of starting putting the houses right now, so that kind of falls within the same timeline.
Regarding the comment about the pond being contaminated in the ditch, do you have any information about that?
Yeah, I think I wrote down everything, so I'll try my best to address those. So Chad Mays, Kinley Horn, 596th Street, Suite 380. As far as the legal drain, we've been discussing with Hancock County Surveyor's Office as well as the reviewer, which is Christopher Bird. The plan is to more or less intercept right north of the existing wet pond. Reroute it in a 30-inch rough sized natural tile to the west, and it's gonna follow the west property line down south all the way to the open channel there in the southwest corner. So with this development, it actually is detained runoff, so it's gonna reduce the flow going there. And it's also increasing the pipe height there, so capacity on that tile should increase. And then during the relocation, hearing your concern on under drains connecting to it. It's common practice and it will be in our construction documents to intercept any of those and connect them to the pipe as to not interfere with any existing flow. Contamination in the pond. We'll take a look at that. Hearing your concern. I don't think we were fully aware of that, so.
I'll add that, the owner of the property that has the pond has a clean fill letter from when that was put in.
Okay.
So there is at least a clean fill letter
Oh.
in existence, so I'm not sure the current status and so.
Yeah, so we'll dive deeper into that to better understand, but with the ponds too, there's water quality aspects that basically take the suspended solids and let them settle. Make water clean, so that's how we're addressing water quality. But we'll get a hold of that letter too and take a look at it. And then I think your next comment was 150 north being narrow. So the intent is, and that's kind of why we have that right in, right out there, is to kind of keep traffic going more towards the north and to the east. So there are improvements that are going to occur basically south of that 200 roundabout to allow for right in traffic off of there and get it to funnel through. And then try and channelize traffic more north and east and then on Buck Creek Road. It's kind of the design intent.
Now, the houses though on the south side of 150 dump on 150, right?
Yes.
So there's no relieving that. And there's a lot of homes you're putting in that area, so,
You're saying 150 east west?
right,
Gotcha. Yeah, the TIS, I believe, shows it mostly going north and then over it's the roundabout and then up. So we could take a look at that, but that, we did do a TIS study. As part of the rezoning and the improvements that were indicated in that are shown.
Also for information, as they proceed on, the town, Butler Fairman is our contractor that reviews the drainage and all that, right? Crossroads, I'm sorry. Crossroads, it was, Butler Fairman was here earlier, the Crossroads, is contractor, the town contract with to make sure that all the drainage is done properly when it's pushed in, so. Whatever, that goes through the county too, so. They'll be reviewing all that as it happens. And what we found in most of the subdivisions where they've had drainage problems, when we put new subdivisions in, the drainage is actually better in the surrounding areas because of that. So. Okay. Any other comments from you folks? All right, so it's time for us. Do we have any other questions that we want to have answered?
I just have one reminder, at the last, I believe, planning commission meeting, we talked about the apartments and changing the brick, not adding more brick, but do you recall that? I just want to make sure you guys don't forget.
Okay.
Okay, no, don't forget. And if you want to see what it looks like at, 600 and Pendleton Pike in McCordsville, that, you can see that. And that'll come before you guys in the development plan review. Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember.
Okay. If there's no other comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move we approve petition NAPP 2025-02, a preliminary plat for Triple North. Also, I move this approval be made subject to the following conditions. That the revised landscape plan must be submitted with secondary plat and address the following issues. Check and correct discrepancies between the tables of required plants, plant schedules, and the displayed amount of landscaping on the plan. Add parkway trees to the north and south portions of County Road 150 in single family phases and along the eastern side of lines to divide the multi-family lot into two. A total of 448 parkway streets in the entire development shall be achieved. That just should be pretty. I was trying to say, that didn't sound right. 448 trees. Add missing shrubs to the multifamily transitional buffers for the zoning ordinance requirements. Ensure that the landscaping is provided in all buffers per the PUD ordinance requirements. And some of the local streets and radii do not meet the minimum required radius. The revised plans must be submitted with the secondary plat. Review the need for the additional right-of-way dedication to fit all road improvements and revise plans accordingly at the secondary plat. Water flow and pressure must be checked and proved to be adequate, and results must be submitted with secondary plat application. And finally, the approval by the Hancock County Drainage Board must be received before the secondary plat application.
You want a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Next on the agenda is the PUD amendment for Parkview. That is the subdivision is I think we started, it's on 700. It's PUDA, since it's an amendment to what was approved back in January of 2022. And it's, between 700 and US 40. So. We'll take a look at it when we get my stuff, you know. All right.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the planning commission. My name is Lee Phillips. I'm the land acquisition manager for D.R. Horton here in Indianapolis. Our office is at forgot our address, 3665 Priority Way South Drive in Indianapolis. Thank you for the introduction on Parkview. That is what we're here for this evening. We're the builder of the homes in the single family neighborhood. And you are right, it is located on North 700 West, north of US 40. I'm going to try to keep this pretty short and sweet. But we are essentially asking for a PUD amendment on the cottage lots that are in the neighborhood. So just as a brief overview on the neighborhood, if you remember, if you were on the commission, then it's 261 lots total. There are 3 different size lots. There are 70-foot lots, which are called the estate lots. There are 60-foot wide lots, which are called the legacy lots. And then there are 40-foot wide lots, which are the cottage lots. The amendment that we are seeking to the PUD only impacts the cottage lots. There are 63 total cottage lots. And if you look on the screen, they're outlined in red. So north is to the right on that screen. So the fronts of the homes would face west. The rears of the homes would face east. These are cottage lots, meaning that there's an alley in the rear, the garage is in the rear. The front of the home has no garage. So just for reference. So there are 63 total. There are 19 of them currently developed. We have our first phase developed. They're developing phase 2, and then we'll develop phase 3 when the need arises to develop that phase. So there are 19 currently developed and 44 future lots that will be developed amongst those cottage lots. So the reason why we are seeking an amendment, if you could go to the next slide, please. There you go. Okay, so this is just another view, now north is up, a view of the cottage lots, which are again on the eastern border of the property. And then the bottom part, which is shaded in blue, are the lots that are currently developed. If you scroll down just a little bit. There you go. Okay. So that east-west road, everything south of that east-west road is currently developed. And then if you could scroll down to the next one, please. Thank you. So this is just and I apologize, it's a little big, but this is a brief exhibit that shows what we are proposing to do or asking the amendment for. And currently the setbacks on these cottage lots, the rear setback is 30 feet. We are asking that it be changed to 20 feet. The front setback varies between 20, 22, and 24. So the fronts of the home staggered. On the 20-foot front setback, we're asking that to be changed to 17 feet. So essentially what we're asking for is a larger buildable area. We have a couple of additional plans that don't fit as the plat was done the first time. And one of them includes a ranch plan that we feel is a great option for potential homeowners in Cumberland. So we're asking for this PUD amendment to be able to offer more options for potential residents of Cumberland. and one of them is a ranch plan. As you know, with these narrower lots with the garages in the back, they get very, very deep. Plans are just really deep. So this is the reason why we're here asking for the PDP amendment. I do want to note that the 20-foot rear setback will allow for cars to be parked in the rear, in the driveway. They do not have to park on the street. There's room for cars to park obviously in the garage, but also in the driveway. There's enough room back there. We also, just kind of in conclusion, and again, I want to try to keep it brief. We don't feel like this changes the intent of the neighborhood, the intent of the cottage lots. We really just want to try to offer more plans, to get a variety of home styles, and opportunities for people to live in these cottage lots, and we feel like the ranch plan is. If you could scroll down, I just included a few examples of the cottage lots. So these are all just different variations. There's one of the ranch plans that I think we've got 3 different elevations, but I just chose one. And again, that plan's just really, really deep, and another plan's just really, really deep. So with that, I will answer.
I assume the valley it's a 2-lane road, basically, right?
Yeah,
And it's got roll curves.
I don't remember if it has roll curves or flat
Like
curves.
the normal streets we have.
You know what, I don't remember either.
They may be flat curves. So they're not rolled, but they are curves, but they're actually flat. I'm not 1000% sure. I don't remember.
I was
Okay.
gonna say, I just drove it the other day and I can't.
I don't remember. Right.
And I did measure my F-150 pickup truck, and it's 19.5 feet long.
Okay,
So 20 foot will get it off the street, but I want. Will there be limited parking? Will there be no parking then, signs, or will there be no parking?
in the alley, or I don't know if that's is that an?
It's
Is that a Cumberland thing or a HOA thing?
Their alley, I believe, is private. So I think it's an HOA thing.
Okay.
The one in the other project will be public because it's also
Right.
the drive to the public
Right,
park.
I actually think, if you look at that exhibit again, if you could scroll up, please.
Ben thinks they're rolled curves.
Oh, looks like a 50.
So you said HOA, do you mean they to enforce it, or are you talking about maintaining too?
Both.
Both.
It's the alley's private. If I remember correct.
Okay.
I use the manual method there.
It doesn't like me.
Thank you. Yeah, so our engineer did this and there is a note on that very last lot that has a 20, below it says 25 feet minimum drive length. So Oksana, do you have any insight on that? Is that?
I just know that we have a landscape buffer. And a good amount of space for the driveway, and if a little bit of a truck hangs over the driveway apron that is typically about 5 feet deep before
That
it
may
hits the alley, it gives it additional 5 feet for a little bit of that.
Standard F-150 with not an extended cab is 19.5 feet, so
Yeah.
that's good.
I think we started with 25 feet, but then with the apron, it's more so that, I live in the old part of, another city where the alley is 9 feet paved, 14 feet of the alley, and it serves, 2 rows of houses. Here we have just 1 row of houses with, again, there is enough of the area for cars to drive by, and my main thing was just making sure that large vehicles like a trash, like if the truck, what I mean, that they can come up and
If it gives you an idea, the standard parking space is 8 to 9 feet wide, so.
Yeah.
5 foot
Yeah.
driveway.
Right, right. But yeah, cars parked along where you understand it's a little narrow, we get fire trucks through. No, that's okay. I just wondered about the curvature.
It's pretty wide through there.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Just a quick note on the procedure, I believe that since this is a legislative change, Plan Commission. Reviews it today, has a public hearing on it and gives a recommendation to the council to make a legislative change. The criteria for the review are similar to the plan unit development criteria. I'm not gonna read them, you already know them. We already went through the project history and the proposal, so I think I will skip those details. Basically just summarize that the request is to change the language just on one page of the CBD ordinance and 3 places. So we are reducing the rear setback from 30 to 20 feet. They will keep the minimum front setback of 20 feet on 46 lots. And then, they would like to request a smaller front setback of 17 feet on up to 23 cottage lots. This is so that that plan that doesn't fit can fit into that, building envelope. And they still are planning on staggering the front setbacks, which was the original request, just to make sure that you're kind of staggering the depth where the houses end up being. And then also the current PUD has sort of like a sentence that says that the rear setback could be varied depending on where the house ends up being. I recommended that we just remove that sentence and we just have a flat 20-foot rear setback. So those are the 3 changes that are requested today. And because these setbacks don't really change, you know, the design of the PUD, I believe that the design will be still safe. You know, I recommend approval to this project, and I think that all of the criteria of the PUD that were originally found to be true, I think they're still maintained. There were no comments from the engineers, fire department, street department, utility, or county drainage board. And I think the only last thing to add here is that because we're changing the front setback with this amendment, and part of the plat was already platted, the developer will have to come back to replat the front setback line later in the process to reflect the change to the front setback too. So
And
I think,
that's an administrative,
okay,
it's similar to the secretary.
got it, okay. So, so that's just gonna be stuff.
Yep, so it'll be at the staff level.
So yeah, so the staff pretty much recommends approval of the PUD amendment 2025-03 based on the findings that it pretty much meets all the criteria of the PUD.
Now, what was the one condition that you said was, I'm not quite, I was reading something there, that you said, you know, the one wording about the 20, what was that?
Let me.
Slight one, the one that is proposed. Your recommendation. Your recommendation had a slight word change from what they recommended.
So the amendment to the PUD one includes that change. They've already made that change that you requested.
Yes, so
Okay.
after the tech review, they provided a revised page. That's what I.
Okay, they've already done that thing. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, this is why right now the staff report itself doesn't include any conditions because they cleaned it up before, you know. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
This is a recommendation or non-recommendation to the council, or this is just a,
To the council.
that's what I thought, okay.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion.
I got it. So here, what was the public hearing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Skip.
I'll open the public hearing. I'm close to the public, so I know I have to do it officially. And there's no public that wants to make a comment, so I will close the public hearing. Sorry about that. Thank you. Okay, so I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve PUDA 2025-03.
This would be a recommendation to the council. Right, so you'd be favorable, unfavorable, to the recommendation.
Favorable recommendation to council for PUDA 2025-03. To reduce rear setbacks from 20 feet or to 30 feet to 20 and front setbacks from 20 to 17 feet, correct?
Yes.
We have to put all those other words in there. Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll say.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Any other business? I don't think so. I think you said.
No applications came in for August, so we get on the spot. At least on the fall.
See you in September with a little work, right?
The ceiling man.
We're getting that. Open meeting. That's why we pay the big bucks. Oh, I'm very close. Now, somebody. We're adjourned.